Thursday. Welcome to the Colby Daniels podcast presented by Artisan Botanicals in Midwest City. Check out their line of natural medicine products, including Kratom, CBD, and Delta 8. If you're unfamiliar with these products or their benefits, don't hesitate to give Artisan Botanicals a call, 405-458-9699. It's all about educating yourself, and they have a staff that's dedicated to helping you live a better life. So again, 405-458-9699. Plus, we're saving you 15% when you order online. abotanicalcompany.com. Use the discount code ColbyShow to save 15% off. Again, abotanicalcompany.com. All right, it's Thursday, which means our weekly MMA show with my guest, Will Brewer. Will Brewer, what's going on today?
Man, I feel like you're a little bit more perky today. You're a little more happy than usual. I wonder why that is, Colby.
Happy? I don't know about happy. It's been a wild week. There's been a lot happening. You probably sense my franticness just with so many moving parts to everything I'm dealing with this week. That's probably what you're sensing. But if you want to rewind back to last Saturday night, there was a significant amount of happiness just flowing through my veins.
Yeah, and it was definitely the opposite for me. Unfortunately, we're going to have to get into it. But, yeah, I definitely sense a lot of laughs from you today. So I mentally put myself in a headspace to be laughed at today. So I'm ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, there might be a situation where at some point during this, I just say, what the hell were you thinking? So be prepared for that because that's coming.
I'm ready, man.
All right. So let's go back to UFC 260 on Saturday night. Look, the bottom line is, and I don't think it can be understated, Saturday night was monstrous for the UFC. The fact that you have Francis Ngannou now as the face of the most popular division in the sport. I mean, he is the heavyweight king. He is the scariest heavyweight we've ever seen in this sport. And for him to show us another level of his game, for him to show us sophistication, as Joe Rogan likes to say, for him to show us the patience to execute a game plan on top of just the physical gifts that he already possesses. Home run for the UFC. I think this guy is a massive draw in terms of what they can do with him in this heavyweight division. And look, Will, we've talked about this for weeks. There's been a changing of the guard in the heavyweight division anyway. There's so many new, young, fresh faces. We've seen some of these older guys get released by the UFC. It's a new division, and now you have a new champion. And, as far as Dana White is concerned, I don't know whether he has rooting interest in something like that. But, look, I'll tell you this. I have a lot of friends that I wouldn't say are MMA fans, but, they pay attention to it from time to time. The majority of those people are far more likely to watch a Francis Ngannou fight against random opponent than a Stipe Miocic fight. And I don't think that is anything negative towards Stipe. Stipe is the greatest heavyweight in UFC history, but I think there's a Mike Tyson level of excitement when Francis enters the octagon that, we talk about this with guys like Conor McGregor, that somewhat supersedes the everyday fans and kind of makes its way to, the people that may watch one UFC card per 6 months. And if they're watching one, it's probably Conor McGregor, or maybe in this case, Francis Ngannou has taken his seat in that department.
Yeah, man, this was best case scenario for the UFC because Francis, he's been the scariest heavyweight in the UFC since he basically walked in the door. Knockouts of the baddest men on the planet and everything. But now we talk about how scary he is, and now he's got the belt on him. So when you say the phrase "baddest man on the planet," like that is Francis Ngannou. Like there's nobody else that even gives you that image. Like when you see Francis Ngannou, the 6'4", 265, I mean, probably weighs more on fight day. Like cut, like ripped, like muscles, he is jacked. And then with the power he possesses, and then just like you said, adding that extra layer to his game to show you that he's getting better. I mean, that's scary for the entire UFC. And the drawing power that Francis could have. I mean, I could go and I could tell my friends like, man, Stipe and DC are fighting. It's going to be a great fight. And then I could tell them, man, Francis Ngannou's fighting. He's probably going to knock this guy out in like a minute or two. You're going to have to keep your eyes on it. I mean, people are more likely going to watch Francis Ngannou than be like, a good MMA fight. I mean, whatever.
Right.
I mean, but everyone wants to see knockouts, and Francis Ngannou, that's what he does. That's his calling card.
It's a Mike Tyson like, I think, level of excitement, right? Like this thing could end in 20 seconds.
Yeah, it could end in 20 seconds, and then you're just waiting. I remember when the fight started, my heart was pounding out of my chest, like we talk about, because you just didn't know like what Francis' approach is going to be. But to see him just kind of labored back, it was just kind of like, wow, like at any moment he's going to explode. You're just kind of waiting on it, and I feel like that intrigue, just how excited that Francis will get you, that just adds to the drawing power of him.
Yeah, no doubt. So that fight starts, and I'm standing up, heart's beating 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm like, holy cow, this is about to go down. Like, it's actually happening. Can't wait for this. And again, Francis Ngannou, last 4 fights have been first-round KOs, the longest being 1 minute 11 seconds. So there's that level of anticipation that, like, as soon as they say go, is he going to be, in Stipe's face throwing wild punches? Like, I think we were all just kind of curious, like, what version were we going to see? And the fact that he came out, he was very patient. And look, I thought when he landed that first leg kick looked like it had a lot of heat behind it and that Stipe felt it. And when he was very patient, delivered the leg kick, didn't jump on top of Stipe after it, just kind of like played the game, I was like, okay, I'm very intrigued by this. Obviously, he's been, this looks like a different Francis than we've seen in a long time. And then the takedown defense, at that point, I was like, okay, I just don't see Stipe winning this fight. If Francis Ngannou can defend a takedown that well on top of just the pure striking power, I just don't know where this thing ends in Stipe's favor. So for me, it started with the leg kick, just kind of being like, okay, the leg kick, the patience, the not just going into an all-out brawl out of the gate, and then the takedown defense was like that sealed it for me. I was just like, all right, we're looking at a different animal now.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. The fight starts, they walk us in an octagon, my heart's pounding. And just to see him patient, because I expected him to be more patient, but I didn't expect him to be that patient. I expected him to have like just, times where he just explodes and just lets loose and just see if he can land one. But I didn't think that he would just come out like he did in the first fight and just kind of just be wild. So to see him kind of labor back and just kind of chill, I kind of expected that part. The leg kicks were phenomenal, like you said. But, the more patient that he was, I was just kind of thinking more of Stipe, because I remember hearing him say in the interview, I'm going to see what Francis does, and then I'm going to adjust from there. If Francis is just kind of labored back, like, Stipe is going to have to think of ways to get inside. And as I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I don't like this. Like, I don't like the thought of Stipe having to be the one to initiate going in and everything. So, it's kind of, back and forth, leg kick here and there. And then Francis landed a haymaker, and Stipe kind of ate it, and I felt good about it. I was like, okay, Stipe's good. He didn't get rocked.
Right.
A lot of other guys that we've seen, like his last 4 opponents, and even before Stipe, all the ones before that, if they would have took that shot, that's
sleeping.
Night for them. Yeah, they're sleeping. So Stipe ate that, so I started to feel a little good about it. But once Stipe shot him for the takedown, and Francis just kind of defended it as well as he did, and then the sprawl, like, that's what did it for me. The sprawl, and I was like, oh man, because now Stipe he has to stand with him for longer than he wants to, and then now he knows that Francis sees these takedowns. Like, he knows, like, I'm not going to rush him because I know the takedown's coming. So now Stipe has to stand in front of him, and Francis has even more of a chance to land that big shot. So then he lands this head kick, and it didn't land like fully flush, but like his 3 toes kind of clicked Stipe in the chin, and Stipe ate that too. So I started to feel a little good. So I was like, okay, Stipe's eating these. Like, he's good. He's in the best shape of his life. He's taking these shots and he's good. So I'm feeling really good about this. And then as far as Stipe taking shots, I'm feeling really good about it.
Yeah.
So I was like, if he can just, continue to take these shots, kind of wear him down, eventually the takedown's going to come. First round ends, and Francis did win that first round, but in the second round, man, all hell broke loose and the fight ended the way it did. It's just a shame because you would think that Stipe would have better fight IQ in a situation like that, knowing how tough that or how hard that Francis hits. Francis dropped him with that shot, with that jab, crazy jab, dropped him. And Stipe with that pullback right that he knocks out everybody with, hit Francis with it. Francis ate that. Stipe ran at him, and you don't do that against a guy like Francis. You don't run at him with your hands down and your chin up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Stipe deserves an insane amount of credit for eating the shots that he did eat before the eventual killer landed. Because I mean, you mentioned it. I don't know how many other heavyweights on planet Earth eat that first punch or even that kick. And even if the kick wasn't a knockout type of kick, for Stipe to basically be unfazed by it. It wasn't even something that like wobbled him or, gave Francis any indication that, hey, he's weak. He, go seize the opportunity. Stipe's always been given a lot of credit for his chin and his ability to take those shots. And from the baddest man on the planet, he took some massive shots in that first round.
Yeah, absolutely took some massive shots. And like he says, it's just those punches that you don't really see coming that hurt you. And Francis or Stipe saw those punches coming. And, as hard as Francis hits, Stipe ate those. So massive credit to him. The shot that did drop him, though, it was the left jab and then that right jab just kind of came like right behind it. And, Stipe couldn't have seen that because it was so fast. Francis is very explosive. That just shows, man, like, even though he's a big puncher, like he's a pretty creative striker as well.
Yeah. And look, the fact that they were both standing there for Francis to get the belt after the shot he ate after he was down, I was like, oh, like, we all do the, oh, when there's a knockout, but there was like a second one after he got knocked out and then Francis delivers the kill shot before the referee jumps in. And I was like, oh my God, like he may not be standing for Francis to get the belt around his waist. And once again, he's standing right there. And I'm like, holy cow, for this dude to even take that shot and still, be upright to me was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just when he ate that shot, when he took that shot, and then the way he fell with his knee, and all bent backwards, and I was like, like that could be like a torn ACL or whatever. Yeah. And then the follow-up shot, like, yeah, and then for him to be standing after that and to still be transparent. I mean, we don't know how his speech is now, but just for him to still be transparent and just to be able to shake Francis' hand, let him know, good job getting it done. That's just good to see. But man, he took some big shots for sure.
Yeah. And I do want to give it up to the greatest heavyweight in UFC history, Stipe Miocic. I know that it's kind of been a week-long Francis festival now that there's a new heavyweight champion, and which we'll get into in a second, the conversation about what's next and the fights to make and the possibilities. But Stipe was a great champion and a guy that obviously I think anybody that is associated with the sport says nothing but great things about the champion that he was and just the dude, right?
Absolutely. Stipe, like, I really don't feel like there's many bad things that people can say about Stipe. I mean, a lot of the guys that he fights just give the utmost respect for him.
He's so likable.
He's so likable. He's not one of those guys that goes out here to try to promote fights as far as talking noise. He just goes out there, does his job. Like, he's a firefighter outside of the sport. He has a beautiful family. And all he does is come in and fight. He's ultra competitive. And we knew, right? Like, Francis wins the title, he's gonna get all the publicity. Yeah. Everything's gonna be about Francis. And Stipe has just kind of get tossed to the side a little bit because we know about the talks about what's next and everything. But Stipe should definitely be way more appreciated than he is. He was an excellent heavyweight champion. had the trilogy with DC, he really showed that heavyweights known to have this big power. But Stipe showed like he can have big power, and you can also have massive skill and technique, and be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. So Stipe should get way more credit than he's been getting.
Yeah. My outburst on the knockout, by the way, and for those that maybe missed last week's show, I picked Francis Ngannou to win. You picked Stipe Miocic, and we have this competition happening. So this isn't I'm hoping for Francis to beat Miocic in that way. It's just I want my pick to be right, so I win the points and you don't. I think I screamed and knew MFers like on the knockout. I was pretty excited.
Well, I'll get into my demeanor about this whole thing because there's something else that happened before this. But yeah,
you were already sulking a little bit. Yeah.
Oh man, it was bad. So I was starting to get excited, right, with Stipe eating those shots. I was starting to get excited again, and then just when he got dropped, I was like, he's good. When he landed the pullback, right, I was like, he's good. And then yeah, sure enough, he ran back at him, and then when he dropped, like, yeah, I mean, yeah. I was standing up, and then it's, safe to say I was sitting down pretty, yeah.
Yeah.
Tough night, man. Tough night.
And look, this is the second one where I kind of felt like, because you got to go back to the Jan Blachowicz Izzy fight, where it kind of felt like the entire MMA community was picking Stipe to win this. I mean, I didn't hear anybody that I pay attention to throughout the week and like to listen to their opinions on. I don't think I heard anybody pick Francis in this fight, and a lot of it just had to do with Stipe being more well-rounded, and obviously having the chin that he has. Like, he's probably not going to go down with just a single shot, and if you don't take him out, you're going to have to go the distance with him and out-execute him and all that stuff, which I totally got. But I also felt like, Francis is just, there has been a long time that has passed since these guys fought the last time. And even if Francis is still knocking everybody out in 20 seconds since that point, he's a completely different fighter with insanely more experience than he had at that point. And if you think that he didn't learn anything from that first fight, like, the guy wants to be a world champion. Unless he's just wasting his time in the gym every day, there had to be some sort of idea that he was going to have a better game plan and that he was going to work on some of those skills. Now, did I expect him to look that good against a takedown? Absolutely not. But like, I just kind of felt like there was this perception that Francis was just going to go in and be the knockout guy, and that was going to be all there was to it. And not that, these guys fought. It feels like forever ago. Francis was a very green fighter at that point, and while he hasn't accrued a ton of octagon time since then, a lot of time has passed for him to work on all of those skills.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to, since they fought, we've seen Francis just kind of, he had that fight with Derek Lewis that was just kind of, whatever. He wasn't the same guy. Yeah. So, and then he reels off 4 in a row, just knocking guys out, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of don't really understand like what Francis has been working on. If anything, if he has been working on something, we haven't seen it in these fights since he last fought Stipe.
Yeah.
But then we've seen Stipe fight one of the most skilled, well-rounded fighters in UFC history in DC 3 times, and we've seen Stipe make championship adjustments, improvements, that type of thing. Right. He's changed his body, way more fit. He's got abs. He had dropped about 10, 12 pounds. So, like, he's been able to take some big shots and, take it on the chin and just be good. So I think we've seen more improvements from Stipe in championship level fights, to where Francis, we've seen him just kind of run through people. And one thing that I didn't take into consideration that I heard someone say this week, Stipe has been worried about DC for the last 3 years. So He's really been having to lock in and focus on DC. Francis, while he has been running through these guys, he's known that the route to a championship goes through Stipe and DC. So he's known what exactly he has to work on. He has to work on takedown defense. He has to work on stamina. He has to work on having better fight IQ. Francis has been knowing that he has to work on these things since he lost to Stipe. So Stipe is kind of just, dealing with DC. Now that that's over, his mind is back on Francis. But Francis has been his eye has been on Stipe since that fight. So he's known what he's had to improve on with Stipe, and it definitely showed in the fight because we know that Stipe's route to victory was to get takedowns, and tire him out. Francis he had that well trained, like you can tell. He had been drilling that for months, and for him to bring in a guy like Usman having his corner, I mean, that was just phenomenal on his part, and it definitely showed, man. Francis definitely made massive adjustments and massive improvements.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I don't think I even asked you this last week. Did you think the first fight was close?
No. After the first round, it was all Stipe. Like, there could have been some 10-8 rounds in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also heard this week, which I think is also a great point. The first fight was a very green Francis Ngannou that didn't have a lot of skills, that obviously didn't have cardio, that was a completely different guy against peak Stipe. I mean, that was peak Stipe. Stipe was at his best, and it went the distance, and Stipe didn't finish Francis. So, you can look at that on the other side of it where, Francis has obviously had a lot of time now, and, he lost to a guy. It went the distance. I'm with you. I thought Stipe completely dominated that fight. First round was amazing, and then it was all Stipe. But, again, you're talking about a guy that's at the peak of his powers against a guy that, at that point even, we all thought, like, hey, this guy has something to him, but I don't think anybody thought, like, he's in his prime or this is the best that Francis Ngannou has. So that's the other part. I wouldn't say that Stipe, still going into this fight, was at that same level. Obviously, the wars with DC, I'm sure in some way takes it out of you a little bit. And then for Francis, he's physically and from a maturity standpoint at a whole different level now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Stipe was definitely at his peak. I mean, the way he was beating people back then, I mean, these fights weren't even close. And Francis, while he made a big splash and was knocking everybody out, I mean, we didn't really know, like, much about him outside of, the big knockout power. So we didn't know what would happen when he got taken down or going into the championship rounds, like how, he would adjust. And we saw what happened. We saw that he was very green and he had a lot of stuff to work on. And just throughout that time, he's made changes in his body. He's made changes in his camp. He's always at the PI working out with guys. So, Francis has made the proper adjustments, while Stipe, he's made championship adjustments, but, he's had a lot of wars. He's had a lot of he got knocked out by DC. He had the war with Francis the first time. That took a lot out of him. And that second fight with DC was beating him upside the head for four rounds, basically, until Stipe made that adjustment, start going to the body. And then the third fight went the distance, but that was no easy fight. That was another war. So, Stipe definitely left a part of him in that DC trilogy. But still, man, that was peak Stipe that we saw, and now we're seeing Francis. He hasn't even scratched the surface of what his peak could be.
Right.
But that was just a little example of what we could see going forward, and it's scary to even think about.
Yeah, the scary part is that the physicality's always been there, right? Like, he's a big dude. He's bigger than everybody else. There was a 30-pound weight difference for these guys at the weigh-in. I don't even know what it was on fight night, but you would assume that it was still extremely significant. And for him to not only be the physical specimen, but to add the layers to his game and to add the fight IQ. And look, I think outside of the one shot that he did take in the second round right before the KO, which I think you can also maybe credit the KO to taking that shot, because Stipe, it gave him some confidence. That was a near perfect performance from Francis Ngannou.
Absolutely, because, he barely got touched. Outside of some leg kicks here and there from Stipe and then the takedown attempt, He did a good job of controlling the distance and making it dangerous for Stipe to even think about coming in. Stipe really had to like time his shot the shot that he did take. He had to time it really well, and Francis was still able to defend that takedown. So yeah, that was a near perfect performance. He definitely won the first round, and then the second round, you know, I heard him say it, today in an interview, like he knew that he hurt him, but even though he hurt him, he had in his mind like, don't go crazy, calm down, back up. Like just for him to have that fight IQ after he's had so many knockouts over these last 4 fights. Now he knows I'm in a championship fight against the greatest heavyweight of all time. Got to be smart. And for him to have fight IQ like that, it's scary for the heavyweight division. And then on top of that, I also heard him say that he cut weight to get to make the 265-pound limit. He weighed in at 263. He literally said that he could not cut any more weight. That's incredible to me. Like, and then it makes me wonder, like, how big was he on fight day? Like,
right.
I wonder what he weighed on fight day. He can't cut any less than 263. Like that's just insane. Like,
wow.
Yeah, Francis Ngannou, man, it's gonna take a lot to beat that man.
Handicap match.
Take a lot. Yeah, put 4 guys in there against him.
Yeah,
something.
We'll go over those possibilities in a second. All right, co-main event was Vicente Luque and T-Wood Tyron Woodley, former welterweight champion of the world. Will, this is where I ask the question, what the hell were you thinking? We were on the opposite sides of this, and I just, I simply said last week, when you look at this fight, I wanted to see a different T-Wood, right? Like, this is a guy that we all watched as a champion and one of the top fighters in all of MMA. To see, what he's put in the octagon the last few times, it's it kind of breaks you a little bit, just because you are so used to seeing this completely different version of the guy. So while I think there was a wishful thinking type mentality from me as far as seeing something different, going back to the Usman fight and to follow that up with the 10 rounds that we watched against Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington, I think for me, the only expectation I had was just, I hope that we see more activity. But as far as seeing this guy against a guy that's as dangerous as Luque, I don't know. I mean, it would have had to have been just a completely different fighter for him to come out and win that fight, in my opinion. That was why Luque was a really easy pick for me. But I will say this about Woodley. Again, a guy that I was a big fan of. The very first UFC card I ever went to, he was on the card, and I've liked him for a long time. I at least appreciated the fact that he was active in this fight and not an observer of the fight from inside the octagon, because that's what it felt like against Gilbert Burns. That's what it felt like against Colby Covington. It felt like he was an observer of the fight as a participant of the fight. So I wanted to see him active. I wanted to see him fight with some urgency, because it felt like that was lacking. We did see that, and some have suggested that maybe that was the cause of the downfall in this fight. But I will at least give him credit for turning up the activity, for hitting the gas pedal and going forward and bringing the fight to Luque, as opposed to just accepting the fight coming his direction.
Man, okay, well, lots to unpack here.
Yep.
But yeah, so for me, I've liked Woodley for a long time. He's been one of my favorite fighters. I went to Dallas to watch him fight Darren Till. Like when I heard that the UFC card was coming to Dallas and T-Wood was at the top of the bill, I was like, yeah, gotta go. So and that was like his best performance. He got his black belt that night. Everything was going great for T-Wood. Loses the belt to Usman, but throughout this losing streak against Usman, against Burns, against Colby Covington, like you said, he's just kind of been in there, but he hasn't been doing anything. He's just been kind of watching, and these guys have been whooping his ass, but he's just been, there, not doing anything about it. But I don't think that his skills have deteriorated really. I just think like his mindset, like his mentality has deteriorated. So when I thought about this fight, I'm thinking, if he loses this fight, like he's most likely done. So I'm like, why not just go forward and just go for it? Like, what do you have to lose? And the more I thought about it, I'm thinking Luque gets hit. Luque's been knocked out before and everything. So I'm like, T Wood's he's explosive. He's got the power to knock this guy out. And now I didn't expect T Wood to be as aggressive as he was, but I expected him to be aggressive. I expected him to move forward. I didn't think that he would be just hanging out on the cage and backing up every time. I thought that he would be forward. I thought he would use his wrestling and move forward because he's a well-rounded fighter. Like he's more than just a big overhand right. Like he's got good wrestling. He's got kicks. He's got and then he's got the knockout power too. But so I'm like, if you just put it all together, you're one of the best fighters in the world, right? And I just thought like Woodley at his best, if he actually goes out there and fights, then I think he can beat Vicente Luque. So that was my thinking of picking Woodley. So, man, it was really, really good to see him go forward because after all those rounds of him just being on the fence and just taking punishment, like that's not how he fights. And then for him just to go forward, I felt good. I felt so good that he's landing punches, and I'm literally standing there like I'm at my friend's house, me and three other people. I'm the only one that's picked T Wood, and I know that you picked Luque as well. So T Wood is going forward. He's landing punches, so I'm literally up. I'm the only person up. I'm like, yes, he would. Yes, he would. Keep going, T Wood. He's a 1-2. I'm like, yes, he would. And I literally, Kobe, I kid you not, I had a Krispy Kreme donut in my left hand, and then I had my phone in my other hand, and I've literally wrote out a message to send to you because I know that I'm thinking that T Wood's about to knock him out. And sure enough, he hit him with a shot, and his legs go out. And I'm like, yeah, T Wood, let's go, T Wood. And I was like, all he has to do is look out for the count. I couldn't even get the word counter out before Luque hit him with that shot. And then when I tell you that shot sat me down, Luque hitting Woodley with that shot sat me down and just kind of broke me, man. Like I'm sitting there and I'm just like, damn, like because I can see it, like his legs are going out. Now he's on the cage, like holding himself up, and I'm just like, damn, man. Like it went from 100 to 0 and real quick, and then he got submitted, and it's safe to say you never got that message I was going to send. But
no, I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you never got that message.
Yeah,
so, yeah, that was tough.
Well, look, that sequence was wild because that overhand right lands and like Luque's rocked, and it's like, whoa, like again, just to see the activity, I think alone was nice to see from T Wood, much less landing a shot like that, and for it to like go extreme in that direction, and then for Luque to just follow it up and it go extreme in the other direction. And look, I don't know how Woodley stayed on his legs, first of all. Like, the fact that he stayed up through all of that was crazy to me, because I'm like, and you could tell, like, there was zero there. I mean, it was just like the will to stay up, I guess. But, yeah, he was obviously so hurt that Luque was able to get the submission and finish it off. But wild sequence. And look, if I'm being honest, that's a Luque fight, right? Like that's kind of what I thought it would be. Although I didn't think that Woodley was going to land a shot like that. I expected it to be somewhat wild and chaotic, a little bit like that, and for Luque to land the big shots once it did kind of reach that type of fight. But man, here's the question. Do we see Tyron Woodley fight again in the UFC?
Man, I've been going back and forth on this.
Or hey, let me ask you this first then, before you answer that. Do you want to see Tyron Woodley fight again in the UFC? Maybe that's the better question. Okay.
I absolutely want to see him fight in the UFC again, because if he's going to fight like he did against Luque, going forward, initiating stuff, if he's actually going to fight, I would love to see him fight.
Okay.
But if he's gonna just go and fight like he did against Burns and Colby and Kamaru Usman, then I don't want to see that. So if I'm the UFC, I'm in a tough spot. Or really, I'm not even sure if I'm in a tough spot because he's 39 years old. He's lost 4 in a row. Like, what do you really do with him? Like, what else can T Wood really do in the UFC? But then again, like, he just had the fight of the night. He won $50,000. Like, he still has something in the tank. He just had to bring it out. But it just sucks that it's had to take so long for him to bring it out. 15 rounds of him getting demolished. And then for him to just go out there and lay it all on the line and then to get finished like that, it's sad to see because you wonder, like, what would happen if you would have went forward like that against Colby? What would happen if you went forward like that against Gilbert? Like, this could have all been avoided if you just would have had that mentality a lot sooner. So now he's had, his disputes with the UFC when he was champion. Things didn't really go in his favor. He didn't feel like he was getting marketed well and everything. And, there was just always the back and forth with him and the UFC. And now he's at a point where he doesn't have any leverage. He's not the champion anymore. He's lost 4 in a row. He's 39 years old. So, and now it's just like, where does he go from here if he was to come back? So, and then when I found out that I was the last fight on his deal, I was just like, yeah, it's not looking good for T Wood.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, again, like, I think there's a nostalgic element that probably is at play here that maybe shouldn't be, but I think there is. Because he was a champion, that's something that you consider when making these decisions. Do we want to see a champion further slide? Like, at some point, whether he can still fight or not, is there like hey, let's just stop this and preserve part of the legacy that was there? Again, I don't know if that's fair or if that's not fair, but I would imagine that plays some sort of role in that decision-making. Also, I've heard this mentioned. He went from not ever having been finished to getting finished in the, he got completely dominant. He went from being the champion to losing a decision to getting completely dominated for 5 rounds to getting completely dominated for 5 rounds and then finished to getting finished in the first round. Like, it's, the downhill slope when you look at the results is pretty drastic. It's not just as simple as 4 straight losses. It's loss by decision, and then get completely dominated for the entirety of the fight, and then get completely dominated for the entirety of the fight, and get finished, and then get finished like in the first round. So I don't know. If I had to bet, I would guess that we don't see him in the octagon again. He also turns 39 next month. So, that's also something to consider. He's a former champion that's lost 4 in a row. He turns 39 next month. Here's the $1 million question, though. If the UFC says, you know what, fine, let's try this again, let's go one more time, and Tyron Woodley's in on that, what do you do with him? Like, what makes sense? Because having lost 4 in a row, do you throw him to, I don't know, like a Chimaev as like do you turn him into like a step stool type guy, or like, he's obviously not going to fight in a main event. Do you offer him another high-end performer? I don't know what you do with him, even if there is another fight out there.
Yeah, so I gave that a lot of thought too, and I was just thinking, like, at this point, you probably need to put him up against, fighters who are kind of like over the hill, like Cowboy Cerrone or like Damian Maia. People who are kind of like at the tail end of their careers, but still have a name, who are still kind of fun to watch. I would do that with him. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight a Cowboy Cerrone or a Damian Maia again, or Robbie Lawler. I was about to say that. Yeah, I would love to see T Wood fight Robbie Lawler again, or if he moved up and fought someone who was like in the bottom of the top 15 or something like that. Just something else, man. I think there's options, but as far as him being at the top, he's not there anymore, and it just depends on if the UFC wants to go that route with him, as far as having him fight other guys who are kind of at that same stage in their careers than him, or if they just want to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. Again, if I had to bet on what happens, I think I'd probably bet that that's the last time we see him in the UFC. But
Agreed.
yeah, I just don't know what you do to bring him back and what makes sense as far as it being a draw and being something that they want to put out there. So I don't know. We'll see. It's a tough one though. It's a tough one for Tyron Woodley. All right, Sean O'Malley, Thomas Almeida. This one was wild. First of all, Sean O'Malley looked fantastic. He was sharp as ever. The striking is just off the charts great. He had the near walk-off that we thought was over, and then it doesn't get stopped. The second time, it still doesn't get stopped, and then a massive shot to finally close that thing out. But once again, I can't say enough good things about Sean O'Malley, what his future is. And, I mean, you mentioned it last week. I don't know if the Chito Vera fight is next, if they go back to that rematch, considering the comments that O'Malley made about considering himself to be still undefeated, or if they go a different route. But he's just one of those guys that's so electrifying, the charismatic personality on top of the skill set. Like, the UFC can do a lot of interesting things, I think, with Sean O'Malley, especially in that division.
Yeah, I mean, for all that Sean O'Malley talks, like for what he says and everything, being undefeated and all that, like Sean O'Malley is such a good fighter. Like the feints and the kicks, like I heard people say like, "Oh yeah, Sean O'Malley's back," and I'm just like, man, that was a freak injury that he had. I mean, I don't really think that he went anywhere. Like Sean O'Malley, I mean, if he never would have got hurt, like who knows what would happen in that fight, but. I mean, we saw a motivated Sean O'Malley on full display. His striking looked incredible. He was able to take the kicks. You know, Almeida threw a lot of kicks at him, but he was able to take them. There was a lot that people were saying about his durability and everything. He's had some injuries and everything, but that's just a part of the fight game, man. Like people go in fights and get injured all the time. And Sean O'Malley, even though he's got a rocket ship on him a little bit, you know, he's still human, so he's going to get hurt too. So, but I don't think that he was. I don't think he's injury prone, and you know, we definitely saw Sean O'Malley at his best. Thomas Almeida had nothing for him, man. I mean, he was tough. I mean, and we knew he was going to be tough.
Right.
He's been in wars, but you know, Sean O'Malley, man, just how good of a striker that he is, how efficient that he is. He looked incredible, man, and you know And now after a win like that, after a performance like that, you know, after a knockout and the fadeaway at the end and everything, like after all that, like he's right back where he was to me. I don't really feel like many people are going to think about that Chito Vera loss anymore. They're going to think about, oh yeah, Sean O'Malley, he's a problem.
Yeah, I love the Chito Vera rematch now. I mean, if the UFC wants to go that route, you know, I think that's also one that's gonna be there. I don't think either guy is in danger of really fading away. You know, maybe if they know something we don't, and that's the case, then you may want to speed up that rematch. But I don't feel like either one of those guys is in danger of slipping out of relevance in that weight class. So that may be one of those fights that's always there, and you let both of them gain a little more traction before you do it again, and maybe that main event's a card at some point. But we talked about that division last week, and when you talk about the rematch for the title that has to take place, when you talk about the Font Garbrandt fight, when you talk about the Dillashaw Sandhagen fight, you start going down that list, and then you look at the guys that are currently scheduled to fight. We just saw Dominic Cruz against Casey Kinney recently, and Dominic Cruz gets another win. I mean, there are a lot of options, and I think, you know, as far as Sean O'Malley, he's also one of those guys that just, I think his star power has the chance to be as big as anybody in the sport, and they'll be very calculated with what they do with him next, because again, I think he's just such a big draw. He's so charismatic, and when you watch him fight, I mean, it's just, you know, it's not just the fact that he's so colorful. You know, it's that he's also an incredibly gifted striker. Like, it's watching him, and especially being able to watch him for a period of time in this fight as opposed to just the quick finish. It was, I mean, he could be as big as maybe anybody in this sport. So I'm excited to see what they do with him next at 135.
Absolutely. There's a lot of options, but like you said, the Chito Vera fight, like, I don't know if I would do that next now that I think about it. like you said, it's always going to be there. And with Cheeto Vera coming off a loss, like, do you really want to give him Sean O'Malley after a performance like that for O'Malley? So I'm kind of thinking that they give O'Malley like another like name, but someone who is kind of at the bottom of the top 15 or like right outside. I feel like that'll probably happen next, and then they probably circle back to the Cheeto Vera fight. If maybe they give Cheeto Vera a fight here, and then he gets to win, then they are able to fight a main event, a fight night or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of options with O'Malley, man, and the division is just so loaded that you don't really have to do Cheeto Vera. Like, there's so many guys like a Sun Sal, Cody Stamen, so many guys at the bottom of the top 15 who could elevate Sean O'Malley that much more. So, you know, there's a lot of options there, but, you know, we'll just have to see.
I'll tell you what I like, and again, it depends on how much they want to elevate him. If they wanted to give him like Marlon Moraes or somebody like that, I think that would be an awesome fight. But if they're going to bring it along a little bit more slowly, I like Sean O'Malley, Kyler Phillips. We just saw Kyler Phillips look really good. I think that stylistically would be a terrific matchup. And then here's the one that I think would just be the best fight, period. Sean O'Malley, Adrian Yanez. I think considering what we just watched from Adrian Yanez, you have two ascending fighters in that division that I think either one of those guys is a future top 10 guy, easy, maybe a top 5 guy. I mean, I think both those guys have big opportunities ahead of them. That would be a great fight.
Oh, man. From, like, the same type of performance that Sean O'Malley had, Adrian Yanez had, too, in this fight with Gustavo Lopez. And just, you know, Sean O'Malley's got a bigger name, a bigger following, but I mean, if Adrian Yanez had the type of following that Sean O'Malley had, we'd be talking a lot more about Adrian Yanez. So, yeah, if they did that fight, that would be an incredible striking matchup. I would love to see it. Yeah, man, there's just so many options that you could throw his way. Do you want to see him in an exciting fight, or do you want to see his skills shine through? Like, do you want to see like someone test him with his grappling and on the ground and everything? So many options. Like I heard earlier that I guess Dominic Cruz had called him out, or there was a rumor that he called him out. So I mean, you know,
I like that fight a lot.
Maybe they do Cruz and O'Malley. The movements that both of those guys do. I think Cruz would test him with his wrestling. So, you know, that would be a fun fight. But yeah, man, so many options.
Sean O'Malley beats Dominic Cruz, and he's in the title conversation, right? I mean,
absolutely. That would be the name that he needs to jump to the upper echelon of the division for sure.
And then again, you mentioned it stylistically. I think that makes a ton of sense. That would be a terrific matchup.
Yeah, just the awkward movements that they both do.
Right.
The different feints. Like Dominic Cruz, for how awkward that he moves, like he's still, anytime he gets close to O'Malley, and with how long O'Malley is, like O'Malley's going to be able to touch him with the legs, and then his arms are so long, he'll be able to get to him where a lot of the people that Cruz has fought haven't been able to get to him because they're a lot shorter than Cruz. So that would be a very, very fun stylistic matchup for sure.
Yeah. All right, we both had Miranda Maverick over Jillian Robertson. I thought Miranda looked terrific.
Absolutely. She's young, but you can see she's got a lot of potential, man. And she did lose that second round. I think she won 2 rounds to 1. But, yeah, she definitely looked good. She definitely turned it on whenever she was on the feet. Jillian Robertson was able to get some takedowns and everything. But, you know, Miranda Maverick, she stayed the course and got the job done. I was very impressed by Miranda Maverick for sure.
Yeah. And then to start the main card, we had Jamie Mullarkey, Kama Worthy. We were both on the Kama Worthy side of this fight, and we were both very much wrong 46 seconds into this fight.
Man, like, I mean, I didn't know much about Mullarkey. That's why I picked Kama Worthy, and I know that Kama Worthy is the guy who finishes fights. So I just thought that Kama Worthy, with his experience and everything, I thought that he would be able to get the job done. But 46 seconds, man, like I'm just like, golly, man,
yeah.
How was I that wrong?
Yeah. So I got points on Miranda Maverick, Sean O'Malley, Vicente Luque, and Francis Ngannou, which is a main event and a title fight. So that is a 3-pointer. You got points on Miranda Maverick and Sean O'Malley. So we did not have an exchange on the leaderboard, and I won't even give out the score, but the lead did increase. So
let's hear it. Let's hear it one good
It's
time.
only 27-22, so yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have a Cleveland Cavaliers Golden State Warriors type comeback where we're down 3-1, but we're gonna come back at the end and win.
Nice. Yeah, and look, we have some big cards coming up. So the next two pay-per-view cards, by the way, holy cow, they are going to have fans in the seats. It is going to be capacity, and they are delivering on that front because if they're going to have people in the building, I think Dana wants to give them the very best product, and these cards are loaded.
Yeah, from the jump, man. As soon as they announced that fans will be back in attendance, like they announced the cards, and we got 3 title fights on the first card in Jacksonville with fans, 3 huge title fights, and then the card after that in May, like we've got a big title fight, vacant lightweight championship, and then I mean, just so many fights, so many wars, potential wars on that card. I mean, the UFC is putting out all the stops for fans to come back. And, man, the first event in April sold out in minutes, they say. And I'm sure it's going to be the same thing with this card in May in Houston. So they're pulling out all the stops, man. These fights are going to be fun.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about what's next for Francis Ngannou. Obviously, on Saturday night, Jon Jones is all over Twitter. He's been all over Twitter for the last week. So if you have missed any of the Jon Jones Twitter stuff, just go Johnny Bones on Twitter, at Johnny Bones. You can go follow it all because there's too many to like go over the entire thing that again goes back to Saturday all the way through today. But look, if you're just saying what's the fight to make, Jon Jones is the fight to make, right? I mean, Francis Ngannou is the new champion. You know, there's a reason that he was the favorite going into this fight. A lot of people, I think, like I talked about at the beginning of this thing, I think there's a Mike Tyson-like quality to Francis Ngannou that people just gravitate towards. There's electricity when he's in the octagon, when he's fighting. You know that while this is the case with a lot of UFC fighters, you know, the power is always one punch away. With Francis, it feels like that's even magnified. So I think stylistically and from an excitement level, Francis is, I mean, the ideal champion in that division for the UFC. Jon Jones is arguably the greatest of all time. We don't have to go into, I mean, I know that not everybody thinks that. We don't have to go into that debate. But for the sake of what we're talking about, he's arguably the greatest MMA fighter ever. He's undefeated. He had nothing left at 205. This is the no-brainer fight to make. And look, if they make this fight, I think it's the biggest fight in UFC history. You know, I thought the other night, like Saturday night when this fight ended, I thought if they make that fight, it's going to be, and I said one of the biggest fights in UFC history. I honestly believe at this point, if they make this fight, given just the excitement level of what Francis Ngannou is capable of and the legacy of Jon Jones, I think this becomes the biggest fight in UFC history.
Absolutely. I agree. I think it's the biggest fight in UFC history. There's a lot of fights that kind of come to mind, like Conor Khabib and everything, but for sure, just with everything that's on the line, with Jon Jones' legacy and with how good Francis is, you know that when it comes to Francis, like, and how great Jon is, like, greatness doesn't matter when you're in there with Francis. Like, it could, no matter how great Stipe was, that one shot from Francis put his lights out. And the same thing can happen with Jon Jones. Just the fact that we could see Jon Jones lose, and we haven't really seen Jon Jones in trouble. Like, we've seen him in close fights, but I mean, we've seen him. We've seen people think that he's lost and everything, but he's always got his hand raised at the end of the fights. We've never seen him in trouble as far as getting rocked. We've never seen him drop before. Like, we've seen him take some shots, but, you know, nothing that's really hurt him that much. So, but then with Francis, like, everything is just so dangerous. But we know on the other side, we know how good Jon is as far as grappling, with wrestling, with distance management and everything.
And just IQ in general, right?
Yeah, just IQ in general. And for how much of a nut that we probably think Jon Jones is outside of the cage, like inside the cage, like there is no disputing that that's one of the smartest fighters in UFC history. And he plans out the path to victory in the fight, man. And he's gonna know what Francis' best shot is. He's gonna know where it comes from. He's gonna know when he wants to throw it. But the problem is, like, Francis is so athletic. Francis is gonna be the most athletic guy that he's ever fought, for sure. He's gonna be the most powerful guy he's ever fought, for sure. So the danger, like the level of danger in that fight for Jon, it's at a level that we haven't seen before. And not only that, but this is his first fight at heavyweight. And then so we don't know how he's going to look. And we've seen him put on all this weight. So, I mean, how is he going to look with all that weight? I mean, some people say that
what's the movement
scary.
like, right? Like, that's a different situation, just the overall movement.
Absolutely. And people are saying, like, he's going to look scary with that wrestling. He's going to be so strong. But, like, the movement, like you said, like, that's a big part of this fight is how Jon Jones is going to be able to move, because he's able to control distance well and everything, but Francis is going to be able to reach him like no one else has. So it's going to be crazy to see, man. That's definitely the fight to make. I mean, just if Jon Jones isn't the greatest fighter ever, he's definitely the greatest light heavyweight ever.
He's on the Rushmore, right? Like, we can at least say that.
Yeah, absolutely on the Mount Rushmore. So just from that front, that he's the greatest light heavyweight ever, one of the top fighters in UFC history, moving up to fight the scariest guy ever, like, that fight just sells itself.
Yeah. Jon Jones wants to get paid, and rightfully so. Like I said, I'm at the point now where I think if they make this fight, it does become the biggest fight in UFC history. I told a friend of mine this earlier today. You know, a UFC fight is big when the mainstream sports media people start talking about it. And I'll just throw out an example. If Stephen A. Smith is talking about a UFC fight, that means it's a big deal, right? Because it's not something that he follows. Most of the time, I think when he talks about it, you can clearly tell that he doesn't really know what the hell he's talking about. But if he's talking about it, that means that it's such a big deal that it has superseded all these other headlines that he's paying attention to. So I'm just saying that if Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones fight, that will be the headline across the board. Everybody's talking about that. That will be a headline in mainstream sports media for, I mean, the entire way building up to this thing. Like, it's going to be a massive deal. Now, in terms of dollars and all that, that's where all of this is tricky. And look, we don't have like these lists like you can get with the NFL when you just Google like top paid quarterbacks and it has, you know, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Drew Brees, and it shows like what they make per year. The UFC doesn't have that type of setup. We don't know what the money situation is. So I see a lot of people that are on the UFC side of this thing. I see a lot of people that are giving Jon shit about it. And the other way around, I don't know what the financials look like. I don't know what a lowball offer for this situation would be or not. I would just say that if you are the UFC, you do everything in your power to make this fight happen. This is the fight. When you start talking about their ABC deal, and look, the next fight we're going to see is an ABC fight, right? A week from Saturday. When you start talking about growing the sport and taking these next steps, I honestly believe Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones might be the fight that really can accelerate that path. So I think you do whatever you can, obviously within reason. You're not going to lose money on a pay-per-view to pay these guys to do it. But at the same time, you know, these guys are, I mean, this potentially is the biggest fight in the history of the sport. So you've got to make it worth it. I mean, these, you know, it's a sport that obviously doesn't pay anything close to what boxers make. And there's a reason why Conor McGregor hasn't been in the octagon for a long time, because the money he's making in boxing is night and day different. But if you're not trying to make history with this one, then is it ever going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, I think this is also the opportunity to say, hey, look, let's do a super fight. And if we're doing super fights, you have the opportunity for these big paydays in this sport. You don't have to go running to boxing for that one massive payday. Like, I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. Again, I'm not going to pretend to understand the financials on either side or to predict what's fair, what's not. I don't know if $10 million is a lowball offer. I don't know if $10 million is more than anybody's ever been guaranteed. Like we have no idea about any of that with this sport. So I think from that angle, it's really tough to talk about it and say whether one side is right or wrong. I just hope it gets done for the sake of what this thing could be, not only inside the octagon, but what it means for the sport and growing the sport.
Absolutely, man. I hope that this gets done. I mean, the baddest man on the planet fights the greatest fighter of all time. Like that just sells it itself, man. And
Undefeated.
Undefeated, never been dropped. Like so much goes into it. And you're right, man. Like we don't know about the contract situation. It's not like we see. An example. Give me a random fighter like Jose Aldo. He signs a 5-fight, $35 million contract or fight contract or whatever. We don't see that. Like we don't know when these fighters are on the last fight of their deal, or like if they're on a certain deal, how much they're paid or whatever. So like we don't know if it's like a fight to fight thing, if they're locked into a contract. Like a lot of times, like they'll say in an interview, "Oh, this is the last fight of my deal," or something along the lines of that. But when it comes to the financials, we really have no idea like how that works. So when Jon Jones says 8 to 10 million would be low, like we're like, well, what would the right number be? Like, is it 20 million? Is it 30 million?
Well, and what do they make off these paper? Like we don't even know like what the pay-per-view numbers are. Like what does the UFC make off of something like that? And look, here's what we do know though. Like a lot of these pay-per-view contracts are built on pay-per-view buys, right? Like you get a revenue share of the pay-per-view buys. So again, I don't know if it's a situation where he wants a guaranteed X amount of dollars and they're like, well, we'll give you so much guaranteed, but the rest of it has to be dependent on like what it actually sells. Like all that stuff is way outside of I think anybody's knowledge, right? Like there's nobody I think that has the inside details of all that stuff.
Yeah. So if I'm Jon Jones at this point, I mean, I definitely want to get paid, but I still want to be able to solidify my legacy. I want to go in there and I want to fight Francis. So I mean, I don't know, like I don't want to go too high on my offer if I'm Jon, but I still want to be compensated well. But I want to ask you this, and I've been kind of going back and forth on this. So as soon as Francis won, Jon started talking about show me the money, all that stuff. If Stipe wins, do you think he says that?
I don't know because look, I was talking about this today with somebody, and they took the other side of this opinion. So take it for what it's worth. I believe, again, and I'm just basing this off of my experience talking to people I know that casually pay attention to MMA and casually like tune in, buy a Conor McGregor card, for example, but probably aren't going to watch Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, right? Like, so I think when I kind of evaluate it from that standpoint, people like you and me are watching it regardless. Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, or Jon Jones, Francis Ngannou, we're watching it either way. Like, it doesn't make a difference to us. And while Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time and is a big draw on his own, once again, I think there's just something about Francis Ngannou, and it's that Mike Tyson type quality that I think he's the bigger draw. Like everyone I know would rather pay to watch a Francis Ngannou fight than a Stipe Miocic fight. He's a more exciting fighter. He looks the part, right? He's this massive human being that knocks people out in 20 seconds like every time he's in the octagon. I think that is a much bigger draw, in my opinion, for again, all the reasons that we always talk about. It's not about getting the UFC fans to buy the pay-per-view because we're buying it anyway. Jon Jones is involved. We're buying it anyway. It's about getting all the people that don't regularly buy the UFCs to buy it because there's something extra special happening. And while I think a Stipe Jon Jones fight would be extra special, I believe that a Jon Jones Francis fight is even more special.
Yeah, like for the hardcore fans, a Stipe Jon Jones fight, that's gonna sell itself. Like greatest heavyweight ever, greatest light heavyweight ever. As far as greatness goes, like that's probably one of the best fights in UFC history. But like, how much is that gonna sell when you got Francis over here, like you said, who's a physical specimen, who's knocking people out in 20 seconds. Like, we know that Stipe and Jon is going to be a great mixed martial arts fight. Francis, like, when it comes to Francis, it's all about the attraction and just the thought of him knocking out a guy who's potentially the greatest fighter ever. It could be in 20 seconds. Like, you never know when it's coming. Like, the explosion of Francis, like, it could be at any point.
And a guy that will absolutely play up the villain role. Like, he will have no problem. Jon Jones will have no problem playing his part in this thing, right? And he's good at it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, when it comes to the press conferences and stuff, like, he said some of the most outlandish things. Like, he said to DC one time, "I beat you after a weekend of cocaine." Like, man, like, Jon Jones is saying stuff like that. Like, Jon Jones knows how to play the villain. He knows how to get under people's skin. We don't really see it all too much. Like, we haven't seen it lately, I'll say, but when it came to DC and Gustafsson and all those guys, he definitely knows how to play the villain role. And when it comes to Francis and just wanting to sell the fight that much more, I mean, Jon will definitely play up that villain role probably 10 times to what we're used to. So, just on that front, like, I mean, the fight already sells itself, and then with Jon doing his part, it's going to be even crazier.
Yeah. I'll just leave it on this as far as them making that fight. Once again, I don't know the financials and the numbers and all that, but I would say that if they don't offer both of those guys more money than has ever been offered to two guys to fight, then they're probably doing it wrong.
I don't, but do you think that they'll offer more money than they've gave Conor McGregor? Like, I don't think that we'll see Jon Jones and Francis combined make as much as Conor McGregor has made.
Probably not, but again, I think this could be the biggest fight in the history of the sport. So if you're not trying to pay these guys like it, then I think you're missing. It's a miss.
I agree, man. They definitely.
Yeah.
The UFC, they've got to do whatever it takes to get this fight going. You're right.
Yeah. While making money at the same time. Like, it has to be a mutually beneficial thing. I get that. Again, it's just a tough conversation to have because we don't have any real, like, numbers to talk from. Like, we can't say, like, well, you know, Dak Prescott made $20 million and Kirk Cousins made $30 million, so this guy deserves, like, 27, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's not reference points for any of it. So it's kind of just a, like, I don't know. I hope it happens, and I hope they make the best choices. But yeah, I think it could be the biggest fight in the history of the sport, and I think you're missing out if you don't try to pay those guys like that's the case.
Well, Jon Jones did say, like he said, throughout his 20s, I made $2 million per fight.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's probably with everything included, maybe like with pay-per-views and like whatever he was guaranteed. But, you know, again, like, we don't know if that's for sure or not. And then for him to say like 5 to 10 million is too low, like, we just don't know. Like, we just don't know.
Yeah. If that fight doesn't happen, for you, what's next? I think it's Derek Lewis. Obviously, he avenged the Stipe loss. Derek Lewis is trending in the right direction. Derek Lewis just had a big KO. I think you tried to avenge the other loss for Francis if the Jon thing falls through. And then on top of that, what do they do with Stipe if I don't know what the future for Stipe is? I mean, he could decide that he's done for all we know. But if he is still going to want to be active and try and regain this belt, what do you do with Stipe? And is he somebody that should be at least considered given the trilogy fight next?
If I'm Stipe, I'm taking some time off because those are some brutal shots that he took. I'm definitely taking a good amount of time away. Just, you know, go be with your family. Go relax. You know, you deserve it. You know, you've been through a lot through the last 4 years. Just if I were Stipe, I would, you know, just take some time with your family. Worry about the heavyweight title and running it back later. For me, if Jon Jones isn't next for Francis, I'm definitely going Derek Lewis. That fight has to happen again because they did us it was a terrible fight. I mean,
and they've both acknowledged that, by the way. Like, they've both said like that. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, and they both acknowledge it and they both know it. Like Derek Lewis, I'm sure he doesn't even consider that a win. Like Francis says, I mean, I'm sure he doesn't consider that a loss. So it's just like they were just kind of out there for 3 rounds, and I think Derek Lewis just threw like maybe 3 more punches than Francis did, so they gave
Right.
him the victory. So I mean, for what that fight was built as and what we saw, they owe it to themselves, the UFC, the fans. They owe it to everyone to run that back and to give us the fight that we know know these two guys can have. So, yeah, now you put the heavyweight title on the line. Now you get much more money. Like Derek Lewis tweeted, like he was like, "Shit, give me $5-10 million, I'll fight Francis." Like I'm not even gonna think twice about it. So, I mean, I think negotiations and everything will go a lot more smoother if you just go with Francis and Derek Lewis. I don't think, like, as much as I want the Jon Jones fight to happen, I just think they're gonna keep going in circles as far as like what that number is and like what the magic number is. But you've already got a very worthy contender right here, and you still got a fight that's gonna sell. You got the baddest man on the planet against the guy with the most knockouts in heavyweight history, or it might be UFC history, but I know for sure it's heavyweight history. So I mean, that fight sells itself too, and you just got two big scary guys who are gonna go out there and have a slugfest, like for the heavyweight title. Like, I would love to see it.
Do you, if that becomes the case, do you throw Jon Jones and Stipe together, and the winner then gets the opportunity to fight the Lewis Ngannou winner?
I would love to see that. I mean, I've wanted to see that for a long time, Jon Jones and Stipe. To be honest with you, I really think that Jon Jones was wanting to fight Stipe. I think that he thought that Stipe was going to get rid of Francis, and then he would be able to fight Stipe for the heavyweight title. And that's not me saying that Jon Jones is scared of Francis at all, because he's not. But I really think that Jon Jones sees, like, yeah, I can definitely beat Stipe. He saw DC do it. He feels like he's better than Stipe everywhere. But he knows, like, the knockout threat is a lot greater with Francis. But yeah, I would love to see Jon Jones and Stipe fight. Just the technical, the skill, everything that goes into it. I would love to see that for sure.
Yeah. How about Dana White's comment on Saturday night where he says, if I were Jon Jones, I'd be getting down to 185?
And I mean, he was kidding, but you can't say stuff like that to Jon Jones. You know
right.
You know he's gonna be like, "What? Really? Me go down to 185? I put on all this weight?" Like, it's like, come on, Jon. He was just telling a little joke. He's just having a little bit of fun, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, in a way, like after seeing that, you're like, damn, like, how is Jon Jones gonna beat Francis? Like, is Jon Jones gonna wrestle? Because we saw what Francis did to Stipe when he wrestled. Is Jon Jones gonna knock him out? Like, I mean, what's going to be the path to victory for Jon? And granted, Jon is smarter than everyone. He's the greatest ever, so he's probably got a plan in his head, like, I know how I would fight this guy. It's just the knockout threat is just greater than it's ever been. So,
to me, just go rewatch the Thiago Santos fight, and then like add like 100 pounds to what Francis Ngannou is, and you're like, I don't see the path.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, and just to think, he was so afraid of Thiago's power, and Thiago had a completely blown out knee.
Right.
Like, Jon was so, like, timid to engage. So, like, how would that play out with Francis? I do think that he likes to fight at his own pace. So I think that Jon would be on the outside. He would, while Stipe was trying to fight on the outside, he's not very good at fighting on the outside, right?
Yeah.
So, like, Jon Jones is a lot more skilled at distance management. So he would probably pick out his legs and everything. And then he would probably force Francis to have, like, that wild exchange and then take him down from there. But, you know, it's all intriguing, man.
Yeah.
There's so many questions.
Fans would be pissed watching that fight, by the way, because Jon Jones isn't going to engage in some all-out war. It's going to be picking his shots. It's going to be very slow. It's going to be very calculated. And I think even though it will be the biggest fight ever and it will be built up as this can't-miss, just all-time classic, I think the fight itself would probably be a little bit disappointing for a lot of people, ultimately.
Absolutely, because Jon is not going to be there for Francis to hit. He's going to be way back there picking at his legs and everything. And it's probably going to be in front of fans, so we'll probably see some boos because Francis his fight IQ is rising, so he knows like I got to be smart. So we might see a fight or some rounds at least where these guys are just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
John's just he's scoring points. He's getting the judges getting rounds and everything. But there's a lot of times when Jon will say to his opponents like, "Man, I'll go and I'll fight you where you're best at and still beat you." I guarantee you, Jon Jones will not say that to Francis Ngannou.
Right.
I guarantee it.
Right. All right, before we get out of here, 2 announcements this week that we need to go over. So the next UFC card is Saturday, April 10th. That was supposed to be middleweights Darren Till and Marvin Vettori. You informed me earlier this week that fight was off, which I immediately was like, WTF! But then the saving grace was the following text that said, Kevin Holland is going to step in, and it is Marvin Vettori and Kevin Holland. I like this matchup. And a chance for
Absolutely.
Holland to kind of like redeem himself after the Brunson fight.
Absolutely. But Marvin Vettori is going to bring it. Like, there's definitely going to be a war. But then, Kevin Holland, there's a lot of questions with him. How is he going to look coming back after that awful performance against Derek Brunson where he just didn't look like he wanted to listen to his coaches and didn't look like he had any takedown defense or he was just kind of playing out there. You want to see a different performance, a more mature performance. We saw it all of 2020. We've seen Kevin Holland evolve, but he definitely took a step back in his mentality and everything. So this fight with Vettori, it's against a guy who's in the top 5, and it's against the guy. If he wins, he's right back in that conversation where he would have been at if he would have beat Brunson. So
yeah.
Definitely a huge fight for both guys. Whoever wins this fight is knocking on the doorstep of a title shot. So big fight on ABC. I'm excited for it, man. It's going to be a war.
Yeah, and look, for Vettori, I mean, a title shot's on the line, right? Like, he wins this impressively. I will say Robert Whittaker fights the following Saturday, so I don't think it's just as simple as win impressively and you get the title shot, because Robert Whittaker follows you immediately, and if he, wins in a first-round KO in like 10 seconds, then, he's going to have a lot of steam. But I think you're positioning yourself really, really well if you win this and win it in impressive fashion, and most likely you're next.
Yeah, absolutely, because, Izzy's kind of cleaned up the division in a way. He's knocked out Whittaker. He's knocked out Paulo Costa, beat Yoel Romero and everything.
He beat Vettori.
Beat Vettori, beat Kelvin Gastelum. But Vettori has a little bit of a say because it was a split decision win. So he can kind of go back and say, I beat Israel Adesanya. Like, the judges, were tripping. I won that fight. I know I won. And he's got a little bit of an argument to have that title shot against, and then there's Whittaker, who got knocked out. So I think Izzy would rather get up. I think he'd be more motivated to fight Vettori, who he has something to prove against, than a Robert Whittaker, who he just got out of there in 2 rounds. So, Vettori definitely has a massive opportunity in front of him, and if he wins this fight, he's right there in the title conversation.
Yeah. Obviously, no picks this weekend. As like I said, the next card is a week from Saturday, and it's that main event. By the way, the other big news that we'll leave on, this was shocking to me, and I didn't see it coming. I'm still kind of like dumbfounded that this was the move. Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz, it's going to be a pay-per-view co-main event. It's going to be the very first 5-round non-main event, non-title fight. This is so weird for multiple reasons. Number one, Nate Diaz has been called out by seemingly everybody in the sport over the last few months. Yeah. So for this to be the fight, it just, I don't know, man. It's very bizarre. Leon Edwards obviously had the eye poke with Bilal in his first time back in the octagon in what felt like an eternity. I think from a matchup standpoint, this is a bad matchup for Nate Diaz. I think this is for Leon, this is a home run. It's basically being given like hey, you beat this guy, you get him on your resume, and you are fighting for the title next. A win over Nate Diaz, and just that name elevates you, and he's going to have a title shot after this. So from Leon's perspective, this is a home run. I don't know that I get it for Nate Diaz's side, and like, I don't know. It's very odd to me.
Yeah, I was completely shocked when I saw this. It was just another one of those. I'm watching the NCAA tournament, and then I just happened to get on Twitter on a commercial break, and then breaking news: Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, and I'm like, what? Like, where? Like, what is it? And then first 5-round co-main event, non-title fight. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it is a home run for Leon Edwards. Like, you just have to have that name. He just needs one more win. He's had so many wins in a row, and now you just add the name Nate Diaz to your resume. You're gonna get that title shot. So this is best case scenario for Leon Edwards. And so for Nate Diaz, like you said, like, what is the motivation? Like, why is Leon Edwards that guy that you choose to come back to fight against? I guess the only thing I can think of is he wanted to get back in there against the guy who's got a name, against a guy who's got a winning streak. I guess he just wants to test himself. And Leon Edwards is definitely a huge test for him. But I don't see where Nate's better than him. Like, if they're going to stand and strike the whole time, I give the advantage to Leon Edwards. If they're going to wrestle, I give it to Leon Edwards. I mean, I think the only thing that I would kind of give Nate an advantage in is the jiu-jitsu, but is it ever going to get to that point? Because we know how much Nate Diaz likes to be on his feet. So,
right.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't see the path to victory for Nate, but I just think just him getting back in there, you know, he's going to make a big paycheck. And, you know, same thing for Leon, but he's going to add a big name and he's going to get a title shot if he wins his fight. So, yeah, it's crazy, man. I'm interested to see what happens, but I'm definitely going to probably pick Leon in that fight for sure.
Well, it'll be fireworks, and that's the main thing. Like, it's going to be an awesome fight either way, because that's what Nate Diaz brings to the table. And look, I think, you know, Leon obviously looked good in the brief amount of time we saw him against Bilal. I think that'll be the case against Nate Diaz. They obviously feel like Leon is next for the title, or this fight wouldn't even be taking place when you consider how many people have called out Nate Diaz and just the overall draw that he is, right? Like, Nate Diaz is a massive draw still, even after not having fought in forever. They could have put him in a main event somewhere, and it would have been a massive draw against, you know, probably a name that was much bigger than Leon. So I think what this does, if anything, is it just goes to show you how the UFC values Leon Edwards and what he brings to you know, put him in that situation.
Yeah, I agree, man, because everyone was calling out Nate Diaz. Like, we saw Nate Diaz's name attached to so many different fighters. Like Vicente Luque just called him out. Colby Covington had been talking about him. Leon Edwards had mentioned him, but, you know, and then all the guys at 155.
The entire division of 155.
The entire division was talking about Nate Diaz. So, and granted, he didn't want to go down in 155. You know, I kind of thought he was going to end up being at 155 one way or another. Man, so many guys, Tony Ferguson, even Conor McGregor, you know, Michael Chandler, so many guys. But, you know, for this one to be the fight that ends up happening, man, I mean, yeah, it's best case scenario for Leon, man, and I'm happy for him because of everything that he's went through with the pandemic and all the fights that he was supposed to have with Hamzat, with Tyron Woodley. You know, he was supposed to have his day a long time ago. He was supposed to have this title shot a long time ago, but you know, stuff just happened, and then with everything that happened with Bilal, it was an unfortunate situation. So I'm really happy that Leon's getting this opportunity. You know, a big payday, a big fight. It's going to be a tough fight. It's no easy task beating Nate Diaz. He's going to have to bring it. He's going to have to be at his best. But yeah, this is the best case scenario for Leon for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, my friend. Again, no points up for grabs this Saturday. We'll have to wait an extra week. We'll have to sit on that score for an extra week, but we'll come back with a pretty big bang. The next few weeks have some pretty awesome main events. I haven't seen all the full fight cards yet, but I know we have some big cards upcoming, and certainly the next two pay-per-views are just absolutely loaded. So always fun, buddy, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to go back to the drawing board. Got a week to kind of recover and get back on track. So I'm definitely going to be in my war room, getting everything back together. So you're going to see a brand new me with this week off, man.
Nice. Will Brewer joining me on the Colby Daniels podcast. That is it for this episode of the Colby Daniels podcast, presented by Artisan Botanicals in Midwest City. Check out their line of natural medicine products, including Kratom, CBD, and Delta 8. If you're unfamiliar with these products or their benefits, don't hesitate to give Artisan Botanicals a call, 405-458-9699. It's all about educating yourself, and they have a staff that's dedicated to helping you live a better life. So give them a call, 405-458-9699. 9699. Plus, when you order online, we're saving you 15%. Use the discount code Colby Show when you check out online. Visit abotanicalcompany.com. Again, discount code Colby Show. That is abotanicalcompany.com to save 15% off your online order. Everybody have a great day, stay safe, and I will see you tomorrow.
The podcast is over.